when did the kind of the drug use part start as well?
Well, as the addicts out there that have done a fair amount of cocaine, they'll know that it was an excellent partner to my anorexia. So that's just what happened. You know what I mean? It just was partying, too much. I was definitely trying to numb out all the time. So not only by starving myself, but by, going out late and drinking way too much, and then, learned about cocaine, and that was way better than the drinking, in my opinion, at that time. So just started down that whole gnarly road of, just partying all night, sleeping all day, repeat, and eating like a couple hundred calories a day while that was unfolding.
Hello and welcome to another exclusive interview by Recovery Today Magazine at recoverytodaymagazine.com, where first and foremost, we're a magazine of hope. Whether you're considering addiction recovery for yourself or a loved one, maybe you're in recovery a little while or a long time, you're going to find all kinds of information, topics about recovery, sobriety, and really living a happy, successful, sober life. My name is Rob Hanley. I'm the editor-in-chief of Recovery Today. And as usual, I'm joined by another really interesting guest. As always, I'm very excited to interview her. She has concluded a prolific professional cycling career. She won a silver medal at the 2012 Olympic Games. She's won 8 U.S. national championships, 2 Pan American gold medals, and a world record. Today, she's become a powerful influencer for plant-based eating for athletes and non-athletes alike. She was named by Veg News in 2019 as one of the top 20 most influential vegans in the world. She's the executive director of a nonprofit called Switch for Good, was prominently featured in the Netflix movie I watched called Game Changers. She's very open about her struggle over the years with severe, as she says, eating disorders and recreational drugs, which ultimately led to a suicide attempt. And then the happy ending part of this is during her recovery, she actually discovered her passion and her gift for riding bikes and biking, professional biking. Welcome, Dotsie Bausch. Thanks for jumping on.
What's happening? Good
What's
to see
happening, man? So cool. I've enjoyed so much, like learning about you and kind of gathering as much information as I could. And your story is so cool and it's so inspiring. One of the things I don't know is how long have you been sober? By the way, I didn't catch that part.
Well, I mean, from my eating disorder, 23 years, I guess. Yeah.
Part of the long-term sobriety, kind of category then.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it's sounding kind of long now. You're right. Yes, long-term sobriety.
Yeah. You start talking about decades. It's a good while.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I think it's about that is what it is. And it feels, some ways it feels like yesterday, and other ways it does feel like that long ago.
What's the hardest part you have found, by the way? I mean, even after all this time, when you talk about something feeling like it was just yesterday, as we kind of talked in the pre-interview, I was saying, like, for me, not using or drinking is really not a challenge at all. Most of the stuff is actually that I deal with is talk and in my mind and things like that. But when you say it feels like yesterday, what kind of comes to mind?
Well, I mentor a fair amount of people that are currently struggling with either anorexia or bulimia, mostly a couple of other types of eating disorders, but mostly anorexia and bulimia. And so it brings a lot of it up. And I've gotten to a place where really by bringing it up, it just makes me feel so grateful that I'm no longer there. Yeah. But it also really takes me back to that space and the specifics of it, and the hell and the misery and the chains that you're bound in, where there's nothing else that goes on at any point in any given day that you aren't completely and totally overwhelmed by and consumed by thoughts of food and what's going to happen next and how you're going to scheme and plan and lie. And it's very heavy. And I do. So.
Do you see eating disorders in the same kind of category as I do, but do you see it in the same kind of categories as other addiction, as substance abuse? I mean, do you see substance abuse and non-substance abuse really as the same thing?
I think all abuse belongs in a similar category. So then you would, add in there, maybe sex addiction or sex abuse and other forms besides just an actual substance. Because I truly believe that they are all just the way that we have selected to act out on our inner pain. And it just, different shticks work for different people. And so for me, it was food. And for the next person, it's cocaine, and the next person, alcohol, and the next person, sex. So I think that they all belong in similar categories, because I've never spoken to anyone that it's not somehow, some way, them just acting out on their inner pain, their inner terror, their inner agony, their inner anxiety, one of those things.
And do you think that pain is kind of just part of the whole human experience? Like, when you're here, you're going to live, you're going to have pain, and then we process it wrong. Or, I mean, I know that there's people that have, a lot of people think, all addiction and things like this, it comes from trauma, but trauma is such like it's
Right.
such a subjective kind of word. Like, some people's trauma is like, anybody would go, that's trauma. Other people would say, like, I don't know, man, you don't know what trauma is, but it's how we process it. What do you think it kind of, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Because it's different for everyone, right? I mean, it's so easy for all of us to say, oh, nothing happened to me like what happened to Susie, right? I mean, I feel like that because 30 to 40% of eating disorder sufferers had sexual abuse in their early childhood. I mean, it's very, very common. That didn't happen to me. And so I feel like that sometimes. It's like, well, it's not that bad. But I think for sure that we have this, whatever, came out of the womb with this like intense diversion and aversion. We divert and we avert really experiencing pain. And I mean, for me in my 20s, it was like, how do I not feel bad ever? Right. I was definitely on the quest to never feel terrible, never feel down, never feel bad. And then as you mature and as you understand, and as I went through really intensive therapy, really welcoming in the pain is a route through it. And for most of the time, it's the only route through it. And so when I, started riding my bike and then started my cycling career, there's an incredible amount of physical pain and suffering in any aerobic capacity endurance sport like that. I mean, you have to suffer like a dog to be able to build that aerobic capacity, right? And build that muscle synthesis and build that strength. And so that was kind of a cool new type of suffering that I recognized that, yes, this is something that has to happen in order for me to get better and reach my goals. But the cool thing about it is, since I had come out of my eating disorder with my cycling suffering, I always knew it would end. It was like I almost welcomed the pain, because how long is it going to be? 5-minute intervals, 10-minute intervals, 5-hour race. Like, it's not going to ever be much longer than that. And coming out of my eating disorder, I mean, for many years there, I just didn't think it was ever going to end. So the cycling suffering was something that I was welcomed, because to me, it was so short-lived, and I knew I would gain so much at the other end of that really hard interval set or that really hard race or whatever it might be.
So let's jump in a little bit to your story. That's really cool, because I know that hearing your story before, that you didn't find cycling until like your late 20s. And as I said in the intro, you, and also from your website, that cycling was something that you found through your through therapy. So I guess take us a little bit through your story, because it's quite remarkable that, like, you never really were a cyclist until 28 or 29 or something.
Yeah, well, I picked up the bike for the first time at 26. So it was pretty much old for sure for the end to be the Olympics, definitely. I mean, anybody can pick up a bike
You didn't think
anytime,
like, I mean,
right?
as I understood, your therapist said, like, you got to go do some stuff outside. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to be an Olympic athlete and I'm going
No, good God, no. I mean, she basically, what happened is I had been working with her for a little over 2 years, and I was much, much better. I mean, much better towards the end of our intensive work together. I still saw her like once a week for quite some time. But towards the end of that, she said to me, I want you to select something that will just allow you to move your body in a healthy way again. Because part of my anorexia was over exercise disorder as well. So I hadn't really been exercising for a while during therapy. And, I'd go on walks and stuff, but
before really that, you're like 5 hours in the gym person or something.
Yeah, exactly. A lot more. Yeah. Just trying to like beat my body down to nothing. And so she said, I know, she knew for me, true healing was going to be able to integrate everything that I like to do back into my life. And I was living out in Los Angeles by that time. It's sunny, pretty much every day. And so I wanted to be able to move my body healthfully. And she said, I want you to select an activity, an exercise, a sport. I don't care what it is, but just select something and let's talk about it. And so I went away, thought about it. And I was like, hey, how about I get a bike? That sounds fun. I can ride up to the hills in Malibu and up and down PCH. It just sounds awesome, right? Like just
totally, it is.
Yeah. So that's what happened. It's really because of her. So I bought a mountain bike, and because she said, I love it. Great. Let's walk down this road. So yeah. So then, 13 and a half years later, I was on the Olympic podium, and nobody in their wildest dreams thought when I started that it would be something that I would, nobody thought it would be something that I would do for a living, much less make the Olympic team. This was just like a sidecar thing to do, to just, feel whole again.
It's really amazing. So how long after you started cycling did you either get feedback from others or from yourself that they're like, Dotsie, you're pretty good. Like you should compete, or thinking, I'm damn good at this. Like, when did that happen?
It was the former. I definitely had no concept whatsoever that I was any good. But I started riding, and I rode for like a little bit under a year. And then I decided I wanted to do something that would do good in the world with my bicycle. Like, maybe I could do one of those long mileage, how they'll race different parts, and now they do it for all sorts of different diseases. But at that time, I picked the California A's ride, which went from San Francisco to Los Angeles, and you had to raise, and this was 1998 that I did that. And we had to raise $2,500, which to me was like $20,000. I just thought it was so much money. I thought, oh, good God, how in the world am I ever going to raise this money? But I felt so empowered being able to raise the money for such a good cause and then do this ride. And so that ride, and when I finished, I rode not always in the front pack, but maybe the second pack or the third pack, kind of up there near the front where there was mostly guys, not a lot of women. And at the end of the ride, the guys kind of took me aside and said, this is a little weird that you just started mountain bike. We're all on road bikes, and you're staying with us. So maybe you should try a race, because this is not normal. And I'm like, you don't know what normal is or not normal when you're just starting something.
So that's, what do you compare it to?
Yeah, exactly. Nothing. Right. Absolutely. I had only been riding by myself too before that, California AIDS ride. I had not ridden in any group ride, so I had no clue what was happening. So that's what I did. I was like, well, where do you do a race? And they're like, well, I don't know. I think you need a license. And you're like, where do you get a license? Well, usacycling.org maybe. So I did it, and I tried a race, and it was absolutely fucking horrible. And then I said, I'm never doing it again. And then, 24 hours later, I'm like, where's the next race? I got to make good on that. And anyway, a couple years went by.
And won your first race. So you start racing, you're like, okay, like I'll go to the website and register. Like, how long until it was like, I won the thing?
Yeah, it took a while. I don't really actually recall my very first win, but I would say it was like a couple months before. And in cycling, you like most sports, right? You have categories. It's not like I was racing with the pros, right? So I'm racing category 4. So these are beginner women. And it probably took a couple months to win my first category 4 race or something like that. Then you move up 3, 2, 1, the whole thing. But a couple of years later, I was I had moved up into like the expert category, and was able to go race in US nationals with the pros, with the professional teams, with the best women in the country. And I wasn't a pro yet, but I was, I had earned enough points and, to go to the start line. And I got 4th in that race. And that's when the US national team, kind of contacted me and said, I want you to come do some testing at the Olympic training centers in Chula Vista.
Really amazing. So let's jump into some of the nitty gritty if we can. I mean, we're a recovery magazine here. Let me ask you a little bit about
Yeah.
like your sobriety story, and just get down and dirty. And if you, like, we never hold back. So, tell us a little bit about how that, why and how it happened. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I really kind of grew up with this, like, the idyllic, childhood. And I grew up in the South. I grew up in Kentucky, or the Midwest, depending on who you're asking. And just an incredibly wonderful, strong, and loving middle class family. Like, I don't have any, like I said before, I don't have any of that
no
stuff.
freaky uncle, no cigarette burning,
Right. Yeah.
closet
No, I
locking.
just
Yeah.
this like really nothing that I can that I can blame, that I feel like I can blame from back then. But I when I graduated college, I had done I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to be a hard news journalist, and I had done an internship at the station in Philadelphia, where I went to college at Villanova. And I late in my I was senior already. So I'd already, studied everything, and I had to take out really significant loans to be able to go to Villanova. So long story short, I do this internship and I absolutely hated it. And most of the reason is because that was the first time I had a window into understanding how much how much big business and government and the powers that be inform our news and push things through and remove things that they don't want. Because we would be on some really good stories, and I'm just an intern, so it's not like I was in meetings.
We're living in the matrix, right?
Yeah, for sure, exactly. And so I didn't know why, but I just knew stories were getting told that were really great. And I thought I don't want to do this, and it scared me because I didn't have the money to go back to school, and I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. So many young people experience this, right? So I was just petrified, and I didn't know what to do. And I graduated, and it was like, great, I don't want to do what I majored in, and that just sent me on this spiral of I was scared, I was anxious, and then that sent me into what started to be a real self-loathing, and also what I now understand is just that deep desire to try and be to lean towards perfection. But because I was so scared, I didn't know what I was going to do to my life, I needed to assert control somehow.
Yep.
I guess. Yeah. So the eating disorder started very slowly. I started controlling my food, because that's one of the hardest things to control. You have to do it, kind of all out throughout during the day. And I started to control my intake, and it took over my whole life. But I didn't know that in the beginning. And then I got really sick, and I became very competitive with it, but also very obstinate that anything was wrong with me. And as many addicts understand, it was my best friend and my worst enemy every minute of every day. And I didn't want to let go of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And how about, so we're talking a lot about like eating disorders, and I know that's a central part of it, non-substance abuse, but when did the kind of the drug use part start as well?
Well, as the addicts out there that have done a fair amount of cocaine, they'll know that it was an excellent partner to my anorexia. So that's just what happened. You know what I mean? It just was partying, too much. I was definitely trying to numb out all the time. So not only by starving myself, but by, going out late and drinking way too much, and then, learned about cocaine, and that was way better than the drinking, in my opinion, at that time. So just started down that whole gnarly road of, just partying all night, sleeping all day, repeat, and eating like a couple 100 calories a day while that was unfolding.
And how about like, I see some of the things that you're talking about, like control and some things like that. I know for depression, specifically, and I was just telling you, that's anxiety, depression, and things like that. Paralysis has kind of been one of the things that I've struggled with since I was a kid, actually. And I've come to realize that a lot of it is actually really a sense of not being in control. And so I see a lot of kind of similarities between that and like taking control, like I'm just not going to eat anything type of a thing. But it's interesting to kind of look at like, these are the things I can control and this I cannot control. I know that part of your story was like, was with depression. Do you see the same? I mean, how did you start to work yourself out of that?
Well, I mean, for a long time, I didn't want to. So I have a similar story to a lot of people listening where, you know, my parents tried multiple unsuccessful interventions. One time my mom came to Philadelphia to try an intervention and get me into therapy. And I was so fuming and furious. I just put her in the car and drove her right back to the Philadelphia airport and literally threw her out on the sidewalk at, baggage check-in. It was, that was one of my lows because she's so loving and was obviously just trying to help. But I mean, I physically threw her out of the car. So it was a good couple of years before I wanted to do anything about it. So some inpatient, some outpatient. I mean, I was over 18, so my parents didn't have control, but they were able to encourage some things to happen. And I would say yes, and then I would leave, and all of that for a long time. But I finally, the suicide attempt of running out the 76 freeway was one of those moments where I realized, okay, I'm definitely going to die of anorexia. I don't know how it's going to happen, but my family was so devastated by that suicide attempt that I thought, you know what? I am going to try to get better, because when I die, at least mom and dad and sister will know that I tried. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that too. So in the beginning, I wasn't the catalyst. I wasn't the instigator. I wasn't the reason I started. I believe that we eventually have to want it ourselves, of course. So it's, it's going to be a long haul, you need to want it yourself. But in the beginning, I didn't. I just thought I'll go through the motions for mom and dad and sis. So I'm grateful for that, because I would have never have stepped into any kind of healing for myself.
And do you feel like that it's like, for that particular aspect, is that you create longer and longer periods? I mean, I still feel like the blues, come on a little bit. I'm very watchful now to start feeling like I'm sliding backwards. I've gotten angry in the past before, thinking like, why is it that it seems like my natural state is to be unhappy? Like, I feel like I got to work my ass off just to not be, it's not even to be happy. Like, I got to work my ass off just to be not unhappy. So do you feel like, I mean, when I look at, and I know that like websites and social media, things like that, it's not really real, but even talking to you now, like, you really seem like a really authentically happy person. Like, how do you do it, and how do you maintain that?
Well, I think this might
too much on a pedestal, because I know everybody has stuff and bad times and things like that, but
yeah, no, it's I would agree with you that I have, we all get bluesy, but I am not struggling from any kind of severe or even mild depression anymore. And this really is going to put us into the veganism conversation. But for me,
cool, I'm down. That's fine.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking that that's what a lot of it might be.
Yeah, it's just, there's a couple things. One is that when as a female, I am very aware how intense and how, I guess just the word is probably intense, hormones are. Because we go through a cycle every 28 days, and we feel the ups and the downs and the changes and the flow and the anger and the frustration and the depression and the happiness. I mean, it's like literally, it's not cool. Like, I would rather be a dude. But because I'm so acutely aware of how the change in my hormonal shifts make me feel, when I changed what I was putting in, which if you're eating an animal-based diet, you are ingesting a shit ton of hormones at every single meal, from the meat itself to the fluid that is coming out of, a pregnant mother cow. And I'm saying she's pregnant because the dairy industry, they give birth and they start milking them from that birth, and they immediately impregnated again. So they're pregnant while they're being milked from the
Oh no, I
previous
didn't know
birth.
that. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. Anytime you're making money off anything, oh yeah, it's all about efficiency, right? You're not going to let her lay there for a while and relax and recover. Oh hell no. So that's kind of one thing, you know, we're getting all that shit out of my diet, and by
So
shit I
just
mean,
how
well,
you kind of, one of my questions was, is how did you start? Because you're not just a vegan, like you're not even a champion for it. Like you're one of the leaders overall in this movement, or I don't call it a movement, but I guess it is. I mean, you're one of the main people that's kind of out there. Like, how did you get into that? Was it because of that? Like thinking like,
no,
what's
but
going
it
on in
was
my body?
when you really ask, like, as far as like the peace and the happiness, that's the first component to me that now I understand very, very well. You know, the difference between having a really hormone rich diet, which, you know, the meat and dairy industry don't ever want to talk about, or the egg industry, but that's what it is. And if, you know, if people different ways about it scientifically in terms of the nutrients and what you're being fed, but there isn't an argument that there's not a significant amount of hormones in animal foods. So that's one. And then number two was how I entered it was definitely through the ethics. It was definitely through an uncovering what goes on behind closed doors in our food system that is completely being hidden from us. And I was, you know, I felt angry. I felt lied to. And it really inspired me to look deeper. So then I started going down the rabbit hole and understanding what happens in each of the different industries. And I just had one of those soulful moments that it was a major shift in my ethos of who I am. I'd always said I loved animals. So if I love something, probably didn't include eating them. And then two was just, as a peaceful, hopefully, person that seeks out peace and love and compassion and fairness and justice. I thought I was that person. Those are my personal ethos drivers. And how was I going to say that I was that when I was paying into a system that is the opposite of all those things I just mentioned? So that was my number two. And because there's a real piece about what I put on my plate every day, and there's a sense of that I'm acting out on compassionate choices by what I eat, by what I wear, by what I put in my house. It's a whole nother kind of happy high that any drug could never touch, and it's different. It's changed me, and I'm really grateful for it.
How did I think that it's really cool. I know that I mean, I really respect it. It's funny. I'm wondering as you're talking about it, like one of the questions I wasn't going to ask is like, when somebody like me says, "Oh God, like I couldn't be a vegan," like, do you get mad at people like us? Or is it like you're thinking like, "Wake the hell up," or like, "How could you?" Or don't you know?
No.
I mean, I've seen it, and I'll just tell you, you already know this. Like, I've seen some of the videos and whatnot like that, and I'm thinking, as you're thinking like eggs, and I'm thinking, damn, I love eggs. Like, I eat freaking eggs, a lot of eggs every day, eat a lot of chicken, and I actually like a really good steak. So, does that piss you off when somebody like me says that? I don't know. That was a question I wasn't going to ask. So, I mean,
No,
I want to be
I think it's
friends.
fair.
But I want to know.
It's good to ask. It's good to. So first of all, like, I'm not on my high horse over here. Like I guzzled them for 35 years of my life. Like I said, I grew up in Kentucky. I grew up on Southern food. I grew up on brisket and barbecue and macaroni and cheese and pork chops and Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Sure.
I mean, we had plenty of Kentucky Fried Chicken. And I mean, I grew up in the 70s. So, I mean, I was eating like, hot dogs and like iceberg lettuce with ranch dressing, like was a healthy dinner. I mean, we didn't know what the hell was going on. So nutrition wise anyway. So I was that person. So I have a lot of, I understand, I get it. There's things that we like, things that we don't like. And, food is very pleasurable, right? And we do it with the people that we love, and we go out to eat, and we go. And so it makes sense. I mean, you mentioned the Matrix earlier.
Yeah.
And that's what veganism feels like to me. It feels like
you're red pilled and I'm not red pilled, right?
Right. I chose to take, like, show me the reality. And then there's other people that are like, no, 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 I don't want the pill. I don't want the pill because I like what I'm doing.
I get it.
Yeah. And it's very comparable to kind of an addiction where you're just like, no, 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 I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. Just please don't take me down that road. Like, so for whatever reason, at whatever space I was in at around 36, I went down that rabbit hole, and
So it was originally for ethical, or then it was like
ethics.
Okay.
Ethics. I just was like, what the F, when I saw, and I just started, like I said, I felt really lied to was my first, I felt mad, but I was like, wait a minute, how do I not know this? Does everyone know this and they're not telling me? What is going on here? What the hell is happening? So then, then I got angry and sad and all of those other feelings. And so when I really saw the truth, it just, like, I can't be who I say I am and then still do this. Like, that doesn't line up. And so I'm going to have a hard time living with myself if I know this and I'm not going to act on it. And so I just went down the journey, and I mean, there's lots of foods that I like too. And then they're just now there's other foods I like,
right.
It's kind of one of those things. And now, I mean, it's obviously like, if I took a bite of a burger, I would burst into tears. Like, it's not a flavor thing anymore, right? Like, that's my friend.
And by the way, how long have you been a vegan?
Almost 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they're my friends. You know what I mean? I've spent a significant amount of time now on sanctuary properties and with rescued animals that we eat. So, cows, chickens, pigs, I've gotten to know them like I know my dogs. And now it's just like, to me, it's like, just like we don't eat people. We don't eat other living beings. Like, that's just where I am.
My attraction to it at kind of out of curiosity, and most of the time I just say, like, I could never do that, for those reasons.
I used to say that too.
So my attraction to it is, like, I'm 55 and I want to be 35. Like, I want to be young. I don't want to, like, I don't like that my body, like, even now I've had this thing with my back, like, I've got pains and aches and inflammation in my body. I don't want that. Like, I didn't have that when I was young.
Yeah.
And I've talked to so many vegans. One of them is my friend. I'll give her a shout out. It's Crystal Waltman. I was telling you that's what her name was. We interviewed her a while back, and we had a little banter about she's very passionate as a vegan. And she said she got into it for inflammation. And so she's like, well, I'll tell you how to fix that. So that's kind of my attraction to it. I mean, I see the ethical side of it. Yes, if I actually did red pill myself, I guess, and look at it, I would feel the same way. But and then as I kind of mentioned a little bit, we don't need to go quite down there, but there's people on the whole other extreme as well.
Sure.
There's like this, and from the outside, it's very interesting to look at, like, is it this veganism? And I'll just say the word, is probably almost a dirty word to you all, but I'll say it anyway, is I discovered carnivore. And so I'm not, but I guess I'll bring it out. I have a friend that's very into that. And it's like, it's the most bizarre thing I've ever heard. And then they swear to this, and I think veganism is much bigger than carnivore. I didn't even heard of it before, but it's so weird from the outside looking in.
Yeah. Deciding,
like, the ethical questions is a simple one. I get that. That's it's like, there's no contest. But anyhow, it obviously is working very well for you.
Well, I mean, I think, obviously the diet industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's a lot of money to be made from all sorts of different types of diets. So, but for me, coming from my eating disorder, I'm not willing to do any diet. So veganism for me is, there's zero restriction, but misery. Like, that's what I keep off my plate, and I keep, compassion and love and generosity and sharing on my plate. So it's, the diet thing is like, there's, how many diets do you think there are in the world? I mean, there's probably literally thousands.
A billion. Let me kind of transition over what I think is really cool. Kind of coming back to your story about, like, you started cycling for therapy, and then people are like, damn, you're really good. Like, you ought to consider competing.
Mhm.
And what I kind of think of is like the superpowers of people that are in recovery. And it's my belief that people that substance abuse, non-substance abuse, that there's something pain or some trauma, or there's something that's exploding inside you that you really can't kind of get out any other way. And whereas, what we call the normies, they just kind of go along. But I know for me, I feel things very high. I feel them low.
Mhm.
But I like to reframe all of it almost as a superpower. Do you feel like um, your struggles with eating disorders and drugs and stuff like that in your recovery actually fueled you, and you could push yourself and things like that in ways that other people couldn't do, competing or mindset and setting your mind to something?
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, just as far as the suffering goes, is what I was saying earlier. Like I had a leg up on my competition in terms of suffering, for sure. Like I don't think any of my competitors came from like a background like that was addictive background where they almost died. That I can think of, the top ones anyway. So I felt like I had a leg up because I was willing to suffer, worse than anyone, more than anyone, because I knew it was going to end. And to me, that was so freeing because, so many years of my life I had lived in the midst of, just day in and day out suffering that I didn't ever see a light at the end of that tunnel. So it totally drove that, ability to go way deeper than a lot of people were willing to go in my cycling, which then, that's what took me all the way, most definitely.
What are you most passionate about today? Is it red pilling people in veganism, or is it faith? I mean, I know that you've retired, like, from cycling. I'm sure I know that you still lead a very
Mhm.
active life, but like, what are you most passionate about now?
Yeah, well, if you might have guessed, it's definitely it's veganism and
Yeah.
and sharing, sharing whatever people need me to share. I mean, for the first couple years, I was that person who just wanted to rip everyone's head off. Because it was like, how are you not seeing this? Because when I first saw it, I was like, oh, I just have to tell people, and they'll see the same thing I see. Well, right, we're not all the same, so that didn't happen. So then I was like, what the hell is happening? Everyone's fine with this, or most people are fine with this. So now it's just it's meeting people where they're at, and taking them on the journey of wherever they want to start with it. Because I get multiple questions about it multiple times a day, and have that opportunity to do that, and that's what gets me most fired up, most pumped up, most excited, most joy, is just that we're saving lives. Every little bit, every part of the day. It definitely is. I won't ever be able to do anything else for a living, or whatever it might be, for a passion. For, I mean, it is. I definitely have found my why on planet Earth. That's for sure.
I think it's really cool. I mean, it's noble, it's worthwhile, it's something you're passionate about, and it's kind of one of the things I think about with where we want to see people go with recovery today, or anything just in their
Mhm.
walk, is just to find something that you're passionate about, that you're moving toward, that's healthy, and you're happy, the people around you are happy, and it's productive. I almost think that you can be, I
Mhm.
don't want to say you actually were addicted to like working out, but I find it interesting to see some of these stories of people that they were a meth head or a crack addict or whatever it was. And then not only do they get sober, but then they go on to create these, transform their bodies in amazing ways, or
Yeah.
they become really spiritually enlightened. Like, it seems like the ability, it doesn't just stop at sobriety. It's like, okay, and then what is kind of the next part of it, right?
Yeah, it's all of those. It's the yin and the yang, right? It's all of those parts of you that were destroying you, that heal you and then take you to new heights in wellness. I mean, it's the same you. I would get asked all the time, oh, are you just replacing your eating disorder with cycling? I'm like, maybe, but cycling is way better than the eating disorder.
For
you know
sure.
I knew that I had done enough work and enough therapy that no, that wasn't really the case. But do I have that super driven type A addictive type of personality? Yes. And there's no way of changing me. That is, that's my DNA. So then how am I going to use it for something that is good? And that's what we all, ask that question of ourselves as we're healing.
I think I know the answer to it, but I was going to ask you, what role is service in your recovery? maybe it's actually, I was going to say, I think I know the answer is I think it's going to come back
Yeah.
to veganism, but is that what it is?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's service. It's definitely service to the animals, to the 9 billion ones that we're killing every day here in the U.S. I mean, the numbers are just so
And this is
mind
why,
blowing.
is this mostly why you're here? When you think of like, what's your purpose? Do you think like, this is what I'm here for?
Yeah, I truly believe that people will look back on this in about 100 years, like we ate animals. I believe we're going to look back on it like we look back on
You
slavery.
must
Like
think
we
I'm
look back.
terrible.
No,
I've
no, I
got
don't.
like
I
a
don't. I
complex
don't.
here.
It's just, I think it's going to be, I think we're going to, we have a big problem in terms of not taking care of our planet. We have big planetary responsibility issues. So I do look at it as, as every day I get up is standing up for the animals and then standing up for planet Earth. So my nieces and nephews' children have somewhere to inhabit. So both of those things, the animals and the planet. I mean, I care about, people's health, but ultimately they're in charge of their own health.
For sure.
So I mean, I care, but not as much as I do about the voiceless, right?
Yeah.
Animals, they speak a different language than we do. So they can't speak up in English, like, stop the horror. So I feel like they need us to speak for them.
I find that really remarkable and inspiring, I guess is a word that I have for it. I mean, I just love, I love meeting people that are passionate about anything, whatever it will be,
Anything, yeah.
like that. But that's, it's really
Me
cool
too.
and noble. Tell us a little bit about your motivational speaker, your speaker, and your coach. What do you do there? Is it mostly around veganism, or is it around eating disorders? What do you do?
Well, I'm not a coach anymore, but I mean, I did cycling for years, but
Oh,
I
maybe
run
I'm
I
thinking
run
about
the
when you said
nonprofit.
you mentored people. Maybe it's just people that you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I just kind of put that out there probably like, almost 20 years ago, and it just keeps, kind of keeps going. It's a couple of people, whatever, in any given month. It just, it's just, I remember when I was going through it, and I didn't feel like I had anybody that had walked in my shoes. Like I had these therapists, and I had the eventual amazing therapist that changed my life, but I didn't feel like I could just talk to somebody like a big sister, that had done, this had happened to. So that's just really what I provide. And in the mentorship program, if I'm mentoring someone, they have to be getting professional help. Help, because I learned that the hard way. So it's just kind of like, hey, I've walked in your shoes.
How does somebody choose? How does somebody choose the right professional help to get though? Because there's
Yeah.
good therapists and there's therapists that are not so good, and there's so
Yeah.
many
Well, I mean, I think all of us have gone down that journey of I went through 3 or 4 that just were not for me. And that's what sucks about it. And in between therapy, finding therapists, you'll go back to your addiction, right? Because it's so damn frustrating to like tell your story for the 77th time, what feels like. And so I definitely would go back to the eating disorder and then come kind of, but because it's like it's a relationship. So, I mean, you have to really make sure that it's the right fit, and it takes effort and time and energy. And that part is hard. I won't lie. It takes resiliency and commitment, and you're not in those spaces of commitment and resiliency and taking care of yourself and self-care when you're looking for a therapist, right? No, you're like half the time or 75% of the time in your pain and in your disorder and in your addiction, and then I wish there was an easier route.
What advice would you give to somebody that is struggling with either eating disorders or substance abuse? Is the first thing like find a therapist, or what would you tell them?
Oh, well, as you know, there's so many complexities around each individual's situation,
Yeah.
that I would be the one to say, here's step one, but I mean, every addict probably knows step one is probably just admitting that there's an issue here that needs to be fixed, right? And then
Right.
I think from that place you can go in a myriad of different ways, right? And certainly there's so many different recovery mechanisms to use.
And
I would say just start somewhere.
are you
Go to
a 12
whatever. Go
step?
somewhere.
And are you a 12-step person or non-12 step? Where do you fit somewhere in between?
Well, I wasn't for eating disorder. It wasn't anything that anyone
Right.
ever suggested to me. Right. But now it's a thing for people that suffer from eating disorders. Back in my day, that when I was struggling, it was like not even brought up as something but it's very powerful for a lot of anorexics now. So yeah, it's like, just try something. Because that's what I did, was like, I just tried something, didn't work. Tried again. It's that when you know that there's an issue, you just stay committed, really, because you're probably that first one, that's something you're going to try, whatever it is, might not work. Second time thing you try might not work. Third time, so that's all. That's really just oh gosh, just if you could just stay committed to knowing that there's an issue. That's really the most important thing.
Most of our content, I would say, centers around substance abuse, but I really see pornography, eating disorders, gambling. I see it all.
Right.
I see it as a non-therapist. I see it really all the same, actually. So
I do too.
well, how do people get a hold of you and follow you and all those kind of things?
Yeah, well, let's see, if they want to kind of peel back the layers and peek into maybe eating more plants versus animals, they can go to switchforgood.org, and it's switch and the number 4 good.org.
Okay.
So that's a great place to start. And Switch for Good is all over Instagram and YouTube, and we got tons of videos on YouTube. I have a podcast that I host alongside Alexandra Paul, who's the Baywatch actress and has been in 100 films. So that's probably, people like podcasts. I think they'd enjoy the Switch for Good podcast. Yeah. I'm Vegan Olympian on Instagram, that I'm not very active on, but I try.
Outstanding. Well, I really appreciate you carving some time out and sharing your story and letting everybody know a little bit about who you are. Like I said, when I first heard your story, I was really inspired by it. I just said, our readers need to meet you, and they'll catch the same that I did. And I'm glad that you made some time to chat for a minute.
Well, I hope it was helpful. Thanks for being persistent, and thanks for having me on.
It was my pleasure. It's easy, no problem whatsoever. Well, thanks. This has been, I was going to say, thanks everybody. Thank you. This is another exclusive interview by Recovery Today magazine. Dotsie Bausch, thank you again. And if you hang on a second, I'll stop the recording.